All right. No. Well, it depends if I get enterprise, but yeah, I would stay with 2015 for now. Okay. Sorry, we're back, and we're COMP 1004, and it's winter 2017 semester, week 11, part 2 of our broadcast. The question just came in: should we use 2015 or 2017 in terms of Visual Studio? My recommendation is we stick with 2015 until September, and I'll tell you why. Right? Not because I don't think 2017 is a good product, but if we're going to do anything new with 2017, and it has some really cool packages from .NET Core. So if we're going to do .NET Core, then yeah, 2017 is the way to go. But if I'm just doing regular run-of-the-mill stuff that we've been doing today, 2015 is still very stable. I'm not saying 2017 isn't good. The only thing that's changed that I've seen when I've used 2017 is their build, right? So whenever you install 2017, their installation process is nice. It allows you to install things like Unity and Unreal and a bunch of other stuff all together at once. So that from that perspective, it's cool. On the negative, there's nothing that's really new that I've seen except for .NET. And the other thing is a lot of extensions that work with 2015 do not work with 2017, which is why I'm a little hesitant to move to 2017 until some of those older extensions catch up, which is going to take about 6 months. I'm talking about stuff that we might use all the time. All right, so we've been talking about file handling, and we're talking about how to read a file on the same line, but we've hard-coded our files, which is really ugly at this point, right? And the code for that is right here, where we have a file name. It's always going to be the same. We're splitting with the delimiter. That's okay. But imagine if we want more control, and we want to use the open file dialog and close file dialog handle for the remainder of class today. Let's go back to this. So there is this idea of a common dialog box, right? And the dialog box, Microsoft's smart. They know that you're going to open files and close files, right? And instead of you creating the system for you to do it on your own, and you certainly could hard code it, remember that Windows applications, Windows Forms, was the first thing we used to create, to rapidly create Windows applications. So they wanted to make the system easy for you to figure out. As there's these two objects, open file dialog box, right? And the close file dialog. Okay, those are the two we can use. Now this is interesting. There are a bunch of components in our open file dialog. And there's a couple ways you can include them. I can include them by dragging and dropping them onto my project just like they were a timer or something else. Let's take a look at that. So here on the design side, right, I have my toolbox. This is where it becomes rather interesting, right? Here's my toolbox. And if I search at the top here for a file, I see that I have open file dialog and save file dialog. They're actually components, controls that I can drag and drop. I could code these things from scratch as well. I don't have to drag and drop. What this does for us is it creates it on a global level. Open file dialog, close file dialog, all right? As opposed to locally for a particular file of form. So let's drag this open file dialog back in. Anywhere on the form is good, and then click enter. Notice it comes into on the gutter of our form. And the same thing goes with our save file dialog. We can do the same thing, because we're going to need both of them, right? Our open file dialog and save file dialog both have properties. Not a lot, but one other thing is the file name is open file dialog 1. That's the file name. Our name itself is important, right? We can call this the, and again, we're opening up a name, right? Open file dialog 1 is not a great name, just like label 1, right? So what would you call this name? What would you call this file dialog? What kind of things are we opening? Person class, right? We're using the person class. So open person file dialog, right? Is what I would probably call it. And maybe Rich might have a different suggestion, because I know he likes putting the type beginning at the beginning and then the dialog at the end. It all comes together, right? Yeah. I'm perfectly fine with either one. The book also does it your way. Actually, the book, Murex book, same. So one of the things we rename these files so that they make sense. So again, I'm using my naming way of doing this, but nothing's wrong with Rich's at all. file dialog. And all this does is sets up two objects that are controls that we can tap into. Okay, that's what they are. We have two controls, this one and this one. There are some other options here. Notice that our file name here and the file name here, there's defaults. If I was to take this out, does it take an empty file name? Does it allow it? Yes, it does. You don't have to have a default file name, and you wouldn't want to have a default file name anyway, right? We're going to specify all that information ourselves. Notice there's other things here we can put in. A title, open person file dialog, we can put that in there, right? We can also have default extensions. What's a default extension? .txt, right? We can do a lot of that right here if we really want to, right? As well as the initial directory. And this is really important, the initial directory. We may want to choose to go into a different place. But remember the way we have to do this. We have to be strategic because my directory is not the same as your directory, right? So that we have to choose a relative path for directory structure. For now, though, let's just keep it the way it is, right? And then we'll see how it goes. So that's the first part. So we can drag it up. So these are all the things we have here. Now, this is interesting, our filter. If we want to filter text files, this almost exact text right here is the way to filter so that it can look at either text files with a pipe and star.txt, and then another pipe, and then all files, and then another pipe. And these two things, this structure here, when you go to your file dialog, will bring up what it looks like, right? And a good example of that is if we go back here, is a spot for filter, right? So I can put it in there as well, but we're going to do it programmatically, right? Actually, we can do everything programmatically. We don't even have to drag and drop here. I'm just making it easy for you so it's there. Okay, so these are the properties that we can fill in if we like, right? All right, so again, like it says, add open file dialog to the form, right? At design time, we can set initial properties if we want to. This is one way of doing it. And then in the code, we set initial directory property to whatever the directory it is, .get current directory, right? And that'll show you the current directory of the directory that you're in. And so in other words, it'll open up inside of the same directory as our file debug, right? Our bin debug directory. You can also specify through the file dialog anywhere you want, right? So we'll get back to this in a little. Then you use the show dialog method to open it up. So let's try this out. And we're going to do it in code first with no connection, and then we'll add the connection afterwards. All right, so we're into our file form.cs, right? Here we are. And here's our save button, the save file dialog. But let's look at the open, because we're looking at the open file dialogs. We'll do that right now, right? So instead of using do I need a string? Do I need a stream reader or stream writer at this point? What do you think? What does the open file dialog need? If you look back at the PowerPoint, does it tell you that you need a stream reader or stream writer? Well, remember, all we're doing is we're opening it up. So let's try this out. So in our we're underneath our try catch, right? Actually, before our try catch, all this stuff here, I'm just going to comment out everything. Okay, so I'm just going to do one of these. Inside of our open, up until underneath the catch. Let's just try this other way out and see what happens. Okay, cool. So we have nothing like that now. Let's open the file dialog. So I'll say open person file dialog .show dialog. I don't have to put anything. I just do this if I want, right? What does this return, though? If you look at the show dialog, it returns a dialog result, right? And it says, so without doing anything else, it returns a dialog result. And what does that dialog result mean, right? Results, cancel or okay, right? Those are the two things we can respond with, right? Cancel or okay. Let's try this out. So if I run this thing, as soon as we click the open button, click. Okay, so this is our open file dialog, right? First name and last name. Click open. Bam, right? pretty straightforward. It gives us a little dialogue, right? So what could you see this doing for us, right? Is it actually going to do the opening of the file or reading in anything? No. It specifies the file name. That's what we're doing here. We're specifying where you're saving and where you're loading, if you want to or not. If I click cancel, right? If I click cancel, then it's going to give a cancel result. Our file, a dialog result, is going to return a cancel type. If I click open, right, then I'm going to return it the name of the file that I want to open, right? Isn't that what we should expect? Okay, so if I click open, if I choose a file, I'm just going to choose a random one and click open. Well, fine, but it didn't do anything, right? It won't do anything because I'm not doing anything with the information right now. Okay, let's go back. So before we do a show dialog, I could specify other options. Like, for example, filter. Okay? And filter is a property. See the little wrench? That's a property. We can make it equal to whatever we want, right? Remember what we said before in our PowerPoint presentation, right? For the filter, going back to this, we want to specify this. Now, sometimes the spaces make a difference. So, again, it's going to be like this. Round brackets are going to tell us the type. This is our data type, the round brackets. Pipe is going to give us the list selection name, whatever it's going to be. We have a little list that pops up, right? Okay, so this all files, we can specify what it's going to be called. And this is text files, right? Let's try this out. So it's like this. Text files, open bracket, and then star.text, and then pipe into star.text, and then pipe that into all files. I'm just open it. I'm going to kind of close this off so you can see more. All files, open bracket, star.star, pipe into, right, star.star. Filter, right? Now, I have to warn you that if you don't space things out properly, and I may have not done it here, right? It will not show up. Notice the order also, text files and then all files. That's also important. That's the first thing that's going to appear as your default, whatever the order is that you put it in. Okay, let's try this out. So I'm choosing the filter, and then I'm opening it up, right? So open person dialog box. Show dialog. So the first thing is I'm just trying to control what the dialog box looks like. Okay, open. And then notice it says text files in here, and all files. Text files will only specify anything that has text on it, .txt. And then all files will show you everything. But hold on a second. How come it didn't show me these TXT files ahead of time? My filter failed, my friends. Remember I talked about how spacing is important? All files work nice, but the other one didn't. Otherwise, it would have shown us these ones, not the INI files. But if I go to, let me show you this. If I go to text files, it doesn't show me anything. Right? I don't show text files or INI files or anything. And that's bad. That's not what I wanted. Let's fix it. Sometimes it has to do with, like I said, the spacing. The spacing is important. Like it's literally like one of these. This doesn't matter here because we're good. It might be the pipe in the middle as well. Let's try that out. Nope. This is just going to space out what it looks like in the list, which doesn't make any sense. And let's try this out. That worked. But this is wrong. So that means that you need no spaces in between here. This is okay. Like this. But the spaces after, between everything, you can't have it. A little better, and then we're good to go, right? It's just a filter for filtering on what type of file we're using, okay? So that's one. All right, now, after we get this open file dialog, we want a dialog result, right? So let's try this out. So we're going to say, we're going to specify a local dialog result. Dialog results. We're going to specify it as results. Okay? And we're going to say something like this. When we open it, we're going to say result is equal to open file dialog dot show dialog. Right? And now, what can we do with the results? If I go result dot, compared to has or whatever, right? Those are things we can do. We can check for the results, right? And we would do something like this. If result is equal to dialog results dot, here are the options, right? Get name, right? Get values. If I go look at OK, that's one of the options. And do you see a cancel in there? There's a cancel, right? There's also abort. The one we want is OK or cancel. If it's OK, right? So if the dialog result is OK, right? Then what we want to do, we want to use that file name as the file name, right? So how do we get the file name? Open person dialog dot file name, right, is the file name. So we read in, it's a property that's contained. As soon as we pick the file name and we press OK, it stores that file name in open person dialog file dialog dot file name, right? Which means that this file name up here, where we specify it as a constant, file name.txt, we don't normally need anymore. We can just specify a local file name. So let's kill this for a second, which is going to mess us up a little bit. And we'll fix this in a second. We'll say, just to put in something like, a file text for now, just so it doesn't complain. Come back to fix that in a second, because all we're doing is trying to read right now, right? So again, open file dialog dot file name is what it's going to equal. And what I want to do is the file name itself, which will be the local file name. So string file name, right? We're going to say that the file name itself is equal to the file name we get from the open file dialog, right? And once we have this, we can put all this back in. So we'll put this back in. And we'll change this file name here that we put in as our local file name. And notice that StreamReader doesn't like it. Here's file name, and then file name comes down there, and we get this, and it says use of unassigned local variable file name. Why is that? So what do? We surround everything in the if statement, right? Because if you don't want it, why would we do all this stuff, right? We shouldn't do any of this stuff if this is true, right? We want to put everything inside of the if statement, because if the answer is cancel, we're not actually opening anything, and therefore we shouldn't do the opening, right? We should just ignore it. Make sense? Let's try this out. So open it up. Now we have one more issue we have to address. If I click open, opens a file dialog, right? And now, are we in the right directory? That's an issue. We don't want to swim through to get us where we have to be. So that's the next thing we have to address. Let's go back to there. So filter is one, and the other one is the open person file dialog dot default directory, right? So initial directory, right? Which is going to be equal to what it said before in the PowerPoint, right? If you look at the PowerPoint, it's right in there for you. It's just in case you forget. Initial directory is directory.get current directory. Okay. Directory.get current directory. By the way, this is not the only thing you can do. You can use other ways of getting your current directory, right? Especially if it's not that directory that you want. If I run it now, press open, here it is. Right, and everything else is filtered out. If I want to see all, you're going to see all this stuff, the executable stuff, which we don't care about, right? Okay, let's just choose that, though. Let's just choose text. Let's see if it works. Choose this file name.txt, and press open. And sure enough, it works. Questions around open file dialog. So open file dialog is required for your assignment, right? Yes. It'll fail. It'll crash, right? If they select a file that's not compatible with what you're reading in, you have to make your loader, going back to what I said to Justin earlier, right? Your loader has to validate the fact that the data that I'm getting in is correct. They choose something else, right? Say it's wrong file or unable to open file or something, but your application should not crash, okay? It should detect that it's not the right file. So there's smart ways of doing it where you read the first line and the first line can tell you that it's the right file. The way you write the file is just a schema that you're creating for you to write the file. And other people, what I've seen in the past that they do is they write a piece of data. The first piece of data is just dummy data. That they just say something like, this file is for, our person.txt application or whatever, right? And then your loader looks for that file, the top line, and if it's not there, won't open the file, right? It'll say, nope, file is incorrect, right? Or if you try and open a binary file instead of a text file or something like that, you have to kind of do some validation to stop yourself from having a problem.
Or more common with like a CSV.
Yeah.
That first line is column heading,
There you go.
not data.
And if it's column headings, you're good to go, right? Right. But what if you're opening up a CSV? It's not a CSV. What if it's a text file, right? And if it's not, or if it's something, that's what you're saying. What if it's something else you're pointing to? Because you can point to whatever you want, right? Then the answer is, yeah, you'd have to kind of do some validation accordingly, right? All right, let's do the save file dialog. Now, you might guess that it's very similar, all right? It's not, in fact, it's almost identical. It's just the opposite. So here we have our save button click with myfile.txt. We won't do this. We know we need a file name, which is a string. So here's a local string, which is a file name, right? Our file name string, which we're going to put in here, right? But we're going to do an if statement, right? Here's our file name. And it's not initialized. We're going to do a file. The reason why it's complaining is because it's not initialized. We're going to say something like this. Save file dialog, save person file dialog, right? And then again, dot filter. We want to filter, again, even though it is what it is, right? We want to do the exact same filter. So we might as well just grab this filter that we have in here because we want to kind of create a filter for this as well. So it only shows text files as an option first. That's one. And also a default name, right? Which I recommend to you guys. The default name for your computer would be like order, or I think I put it inside your document. There's a default name that your save file dialog should have to populate with that you need to change, right? And an example of this would be save person file dialog. And then I want to look at the file name, the default file name itself. Was that? File name. File name. So if they don't put a file name in there, it's already set, right? Is equal to, and whatever file name you want. In this case, we want to call it maybe person.txt, right? Let's make it different than file name.txt. Okay. There's my file name. My initial directory, you got to put all that in there as well. So save person file dialog dot initial directory, right? And directory dot get current directory, same. All that's the same, right? In fact, it's almost identical, right? And then I'll do the same thing. I'm going to open my file dialog, but I need a result. So I got to get a result, so dialog results. Call it results. And we'll say this dialog results, or results, is equal to the save person file dialog dot open file dialog. Show dialog. And then we're going to search to see if the dialog results is equal to dialog results. Oops. And my computer catches up. Come on, computer. I should say my VM. See, Rich doesn't have this problem because he doesn't use VMs like me, right? I have extra work to do. Dialog results got okay. If it's okay, then we're going to take this okay as a signal that we want to use this file as to save with, and we're going to put the semicolon down here, right? So that the if statement encompasses the try catch, right? Here's our file name. Did I not name it properly? So the first thing we're going to say is that our file name, right, then, file name is going to be equal to the, if I can spell, file name is going to be equal to the save person file dialog dot file name. You might say, hold on a second, we just said it up here. Didn't we set it up here already, person.text? Yeah, but we're allowing the user to change it, right? So it could be something else, and therefore that's why we're assigning it. Let's see if it works. And then I'll put this all up on GitHub for you after. So start. Okay, and let me put the first name in. So I'm going to say, right, me. I'm going to have another file. I'm going to click save. It's going to bring up my save file dialog. There it is. And notice that it says file name, but my default is person.text, which is what I want, right? And then I'm going to click save. File written successfully. All that worked like we had last time, right? Cool, cool. Now I'm going to open it up. Let me open it up, right? And there's two files, filename.txt and person.txt. I'm going to click on person.txt and click open, and we're good to go. That's all I wanted to do today. I want to take care of input and output. One thing we should also check on the PowerPoint, right, to make sure we've got everything, is the little details. There are quite a few different properties that exist. For example, you can check if a path exists. You can do all kinds of checking. I recommend that I'm going to probably come at you with trying to break your file dialog, right? I'm going to try and do it. I'm going to try and point to other files to open up. Like, that's just part of the process. Not because I want to break it, but because some user, when they use your application, may make a mistake, right? And what happens if you don't load anything, right? It should, I mean, is there some feedback that should come back from the client that says you didn't load anything, right? There's nothing there loaded. So here's an example of what we talked about already, where they said if it's not equal to cancel, right? I'm just choosing if it's equal to okay. It has to be specific to okay, where you can open up the stream reader, right? Or stream writer. And the examples are all the same, right? So if you actually look through this, it talks about some dangers when it comes to opening files, which is you don't want to try and open the stream if it's already open, right? And that's why I put it inside a nice try catch. And we're only opening it up when we have confirmation that the user wants to open up the file, right? And that's really it in a nutshell, right? The bottom here is interesting because it also tells you how to save the contents of a list box, right? But that's just easy, right? All we're going to do is we're going to read the contents of the list box first instead of a certain order. Remember, whenever we do any stream reading or stream writing, and by the way, this is all that's required. If you want to do your binary serialization, deserialization, like you talked about, go ahead. But you don't have to do that. And I'm not going to show that here, right? For the assignment number 4, all you need to do is write to a file and read to a file. That's all you need to do, and it has to be text files. You don't have to write them in one single line. That's not required. Each record can be written, or each field can be written on a different line. Because all you're writing is one record, one thing. I don't expect you to append, like I have a pen still on right now. I expect you not to append. Each file is its own little. It's an order that you're going to use or load back on later on. Like for example, I want to order a Toshiba, so my text file might be toshiba.txt, right? And I'm kind of saving it for later use. Then I load it up, and then it loads all that data into my form. That's exactly what I'm asking you to do, right? So there's two ways to load up that form, that order form, right? One way is from the database itself directly, and just go, yes, I accept, I want this one, and continue to finish your order. The other way is save it to a file, close off your application, come back later and decide, yeah, that's the one I want. Open it back up from the one you saved, so you don't have to go through the whole picking of the order again, right? and then finishing off your order. So those are the two ways you can do that. And if you remember the application that I got you guys to write, right? If I go back to the assignment details for a second before we end off, we still got 4 minutes. The assignment details, if you look through here, if I look at the diagram that I gave you, which is an example of what I'm looking for, right? See this? The option to start a new order or open a saved order, right? So that means you're going to use the open file dialog to open up a saved order, and then it's not going to go here. It's not going to take you to the select form because that doesn't make any sense. From here, it's going to take you right into the product info form, which is going to load up from the product info form. Now, here's the challenge. What if I click select another product, right? It still can go back. And that's why you cannot have any of the forms linked together. One can't spawn the other, can't spawn the other in this case, because this form, this product info form, was spawned by the picker, right? Not by this. It wasn't spawned by this form. It was spawned by this form, right? So that's kind of one of the challenges. People don't understand that. They can't go back. If you go back, it'll crash because you can't. There's no place to go back to, right? It doesn't know what the parent form is, so you can't use that. Make sense? Unless, and there's always ways to do the same thing, right? You create the parent form in the background and have another sequence of events that trigger to create your the form that you're in. And then you can go back, right? Yes.
If we don't like use that form,
Yes.
go back, it should still highlight that row.
Oh yeah, it would. Yes, that's another thing. You should still highlight that row too, because that's the one you picked, right? How is it going to identify which one it was, right? That's more difficult. That's more challenge. And I'm going to test each of these little features. That's why, even though this is worth the exact same marks as every one of your other assignments, which are a lot easier than this, right? It's more complex. This is the hardest one of them. Next one is not going to be as hard as this one. Okay? Questions around assignment 4. If you have a question, again, please send me a text, a message, or send me an email, and I'll try and get back to you. Please don't do it on the last day. That would be bad, right? All right.